Welcome to a little history of science, and today I'm just going to go ahead and give you every little piece of detail. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make you want to know every little piece of detail in a little history of science. And with that, we're just going to have to get started right now. Of course, the contents themselves actually goes ahead and tells us a lot of things. This history of science is that there's everything. Science itself has been a pretty big subject, and nowadays it's become more important and more relevant than before. Start off with numbers because you need mathematics to actually go ahead and do science. Mathematics and science are always ingrained together. You'll always see numbers and science and measurements always at the same place. In the beginning, of course, people just went ahead and looked up. They looked up at the stars up there, and then they were like, hey, so what about that? However, they themselves thought they were the center of the universe. I mean, if you've never been visited by aliens, or it seems that you've never been visited by aliens, and you're the only species that can actually think that much and kill other species, and you're the dominant species, on your planet, don't you think that you would think you're the center of the universe? With that ignorance in mind, you can go ahead and rest assured, you create astrology. Speaking of astrology, all of that astrology is actually a pseudoscience. Astronomy is the actual science here, but astrology came before astronomy. Astrology came in different ways. Firstly, we created constellation charts. Constellations are just drawings we stupid little monkeys made inside because, well, it's not actually a pattern of stars up there with drawings. No. It's more or less coincidence that we saw a sword up there and the stars to us look a bit like a sword. That's just coincidence. The Big Dipper just looks like a very Big Dipper just because, well, it's coincidence. So does the Little Dipper, but that's also good. Then again, we also started fighting about magnets and needles in China all the way to the Western world, but the Western world didn't really have science yet because they were more into astrology. We figured out needles and numbers. We figured out the compass. We figured out other things too. And with this in mind, we can go ahead and figure out other things. Democritus himself actually went ahead and talked about atoms, but since he doesn't really have any real proof of atoms, his claim was unfortunately disqualified. Because, I mean, if there's nothing to prove it, then it's probably false. I mean, we can't be sure about it, but if there's nothing to disprove it, well, yeah. I mean, some people thought that you can just keep cutting something infinitely forever, but Democritus himself thought that there's this one little piece that can't be divided up into further, the atom. However, we later find out that the atom is also dividable into the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons, and then we divide further into the quarks, and eventually also leptons and other things. Speaking of which, then we also kind of have to talk about medicine too. Medicine itself is a science. Without that, well, you're kind of doomed. Without medicine, life wouldn't be like this. Without medicine, there wouldn't be anything worth doing. Firstly, of course, there's lots of things worth science, like medicine. Medicine has helped us, and a lot of people back then also lived up to 80, also not as much as common as today. It's just that back then, maybe the median age is 40 years old, but today it's 80 years old. Here's a little disclaimer though. Back then, 80-year-olds still existed. Newton himself lived all the way up to 80, and so did Michelangelo. All those famous people you actually saw actually lived up to 80 just because they were either very lucky or they had a pretty coincidental diet that they liked. Also, I'm pretty sure being lucky was one of them. It's just that 80 is the natural lifespan, well, technically 100 now, is the natural lifespan of humans. It's just that medicine helped us destroy the obstacles that prevent us from dying of old age. Then, of course, you'll even get philosophers. If you ever watch my video on the little history of philosophy, you already know a bit about Aristotle. And if you've read it, well, better. Aristotle himself is great, and his mentor, Socrates, went ahead and started off philosophy, and he even himself created the scientific method. Also, he called it the Socratic method, and with that, we go ahead and examine life never before. Technically, the Socratic method has been most likely has existed for a while now, but unfortunately, if it does exist before Socrates himself, there's no record of it. Islam itself is Islamic places like the Middle East. Those places are actually pretty important to science as well. You might be thinking that, did they do any contributions? Somewhat, but the most notable one being that they stored the largest library of science, of Western literature and Eastern literature there. It's because of that library that we still read Plato's dialogues to this day. If it wasn't for the library, we also wouldn't even probably have the Rosetta Stone and the other things. which is pretty big, which is why having a library is a good sin, because then if somehow some sort of, it's like a bank of books. If I had a library of at least one of every important document, every book in the world that is worth reading, then even if every other copy was destroyed, then at least there are these copies that we can use to recreate them, even if it is not in the original language. That's kind of a bummer. We're forced to learn Latin. In British schools, I've heard, are forced to learn Latin, force the children to learn Latin. And personally, I don't think that's a good idea because, well, we don't even use it anymore. And fortunately enough, not a lot of schools do that anymore, so that's a plus. Why use a dead language when you're not going to use it in your adult life? They say it's gonna make you smarter, it's gonna help you in life, but is it gonna help you in life? Sure, it might make you look smarter, but it's a nuisance. You'd rather use English, wouldn't you? Lots of things and lots of talk, a lot of chemistry, and an apple falling on Newton's head later. We still get a bit of a mess. Also, nowadays, scientific advancements are happening way faster, too. I mean, look at the computer chip. The computer was created in the 1990s. In the 1990s, it was this, like the concept of the computer actually existed since the 19th century. Technically older, because Leonardo da Vinci himself created a little prototype of a robot. Later, though, we created digital robots, and with these digital robots, we go ahead and increase the computing power double. We square it. Like, if it took like a few years to do it, well, we take the square root of that year, and the next advancement will happen in the square root of that year. However, unfortunately, we are getting a bit too small, so I'm pretty sure advancement will stop by now. There is this one time, the singularity, when we can't divide any further. We can't do anything. Just like the atom, so it's like everything, it's like little molecule unit is the atom. For us, maybe there is the little computing power for the unit and for the computer. But then again, we have quantum physics. Quantum physics is also particularly new compared to the rest of science that's discussed in the book. However, it's actually pretty important, and also kind of the advancements are actually making fast. Because it's new, we can learn things really quickly, and we create ourselves a little starting point. And with that starting point, we go ahead and create other discoveries, maybe debunk some old discoveries. And with that, we created the quantum computer. And with that quantum computer, you can go ahead and do calculations the square root of times, as many as you can. What may take a regular computer like billions of years just to crack a four-digit password, it would take a quantum computer like seconds. A shocker, I know. And there's still so much more about the science that we can find out today. There are lots of sciences that we just discovered again, mainly because they were lost to time and we just found tablets about them. When we find something old that's really useful right now, like something that was useless back then, but now you realize it's actually really helpful in your physics right now, you can go ahead and figure out anything too. In fact, the greatest scientific discovery, the Big Bang, may actually be the best thing to ever. I'm not talking about the CBS sitcom. I'm talking about the Big Bang. The bang that started literally everything in the universe. Also, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a Big Bang. It was like a big explosion without the sound. And in our digital age, we may even go ahead and digitize everything, including computers. Sounds a lot like the Matrix, doesn't it? That's pretty much it. This is a little history of science, created by Sean Han, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Sean, peace. Bye-bye.